Thank Hashem that we're able to learn every day. And as chus of our learning, we should have the base of Mikdash immediately. And it should be our for Shlema for Yechiel Nassim ben Sarah, Aaron David Alevi ben Menuchad Lester, and Avram Rafal ben Sarah. Okay, we're on Yud Ches Amud Beis. Right before the lines widen, it says Haya Kaisva Darsha Magia. Person is writing the Megillah, or teaching the Megillah, or editing the text. He's looking it over to make sure it was written properly. So if he intends to fulfill his obligation, then he's Yaitza for reading it. It says, Hey Chidami, what's the case? If he's reciting as he's writing, sometimes people while they're writing, they're like saying it out loud or something, or they're typing and they're, could be saying it while they're doing it. So if he's reciting what he's about to write, then there's a problem. And who cares if he's concentrating? Al pehu. He didn't read it from a text. He recited it and then he wrote it. Has to be read from a text, the Megillah. Okay, so what could it be? So this is an easy answer. You write it first and then you read it. It's easy. So it says, Mi yatsa. Are you yaitza if you read it right after you write each word? Rab Chelbai, in the name of Rab Chama Bar Guri, in the name of Rav, he says that there is a machlokes that we'll see in the Mishnah coming up, that where do you need to recite the Megillah from? I know there's a full Megillah, but there's actually machlokes where the reading of the Megillah begins. Even according to the opinion that says that you don't start from the beginning of the Megillah. You start somewhere in the middle. There's a bunch of opinions there. But even according to them, the Megillah needs to be completely written. Here, you're reading from a Megillah that's incomplete, because you're reading each word as you're writing it. Ella, it must be the mancha Megillah kamei v'kari liminei psuka psuka v'kasula. It must be that he has two Megillahs. He has a tikkun kairim. That's the tikkun is what the Sefer uses to write. He copies it. Yeah. He copies from one and he puts it down on the other. He writes it down on the other. So he reads from one Megillah. That will be the source one. And then he's writing a new Megillah. But what is he reading it from? He's reading from his old one. Where it says, if that's the case, then Leiman Messiah Leila Rabba Bar Chana. If that's the case, we have a proof to something Rabba Bar Chana says. Rabba Bar Chana said, Amar Rabbi Yechon, and Amar Rabbi Chana, Rabbi Yechon, also licht the Vaisachas Shleiman Aksav. You're never allowed to write, a sefer is never allowed to write by heart. See? Proof from our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says that he's writing Megillah and he's yaitze if he concentrates. Why? Because he has a second Megillah there. He's not writing by heart. This proves that you're not allowed to write a Megillah, you're not allowed to write anything by heart. You have to write always from looking at a text. You can't write the Torah by heart? That's what it says. You can't write it by heart. Dilma, the Gemara says, Dilma de Srami le Yisrami. This is not a proof. You're just telling me one scenario. This doesn't prove that every person that writes a Megillah has to write it from another Megillah. It could be that you can write the Megillah by heart. This person that's being yaitze the Megillah while he's writing it is fine. He's reading from another Megillah, but that doesn't mean some other person that's writing a Megillah has to read it from a Megillah. It's no raya. Okay. Kufa. Let's return to a statement that we said before, which is a statement of Amiraim. That was what we decided when we started the Daf. We were looking at Kufa and Amar Mar. Said we would, what's the difference between them? We thought maybe Kufa is for an Amira and Amar Mar is for Tana. It's the same thing. It's just, anyway, over here it fits. Amar Mar, the master taught. And Kufa is, let's go back to the text. So why do they use one here, one there? So this is for an Amira, they say, yeah. Kufa. Catch a deer, skin it, and then you Uh-huh. Maybe the Gemara was going to answer it in a moment.
Where are we holding now?
We're on 18b, towards the bottom. Amar Rabba Bar B'Chanan Rabbi Yechanan. See, there may be an answer to that coming up. Also, Lichta Veisacha Shleiman Aksav says his statement is that you're not allowed to write even one letter without using an original Torah to copy it. Meisvei. Where's the question? Amar Rab Shimon ben Elazar, Ma'aser Rab Meir. Shimon ben Elazar is a student of Rab Meir. He says, there's a story with my teacher, Rab Meir. Shahalach Laber Shana Ba'asya. Went to Asia. Yeah, probably Turkey or something, Asia. I don't know. Or maybe it's a city. Balaya Sham Megillah. He didn't have a Megillah. Rab Meir went over there. He didn't have a Megillah. Because so he wrote it by heart and then he read it. Yeah. Someone told there was a rabbi in Chicago, Rabbi Schusterman, right? So someone was with him. They had to daven mincha. So he said, give me a few minutes. Anyway, it took like 40 minutes. He went out to daven. So said, what happened? Well, why is, why so long? So he said, the Rebbe told me that I should always daven from a siddur. I didn't have a siddur, so I wrote it down and I davened from it. So anyway, so this is what happens. So Reb Meir doesn't have a Megillah. So he wrote a Megillah, but he didn't have a Megillah to copy it from. So they said like this, Amar Rabavo, that you can't compare, because Shani Reb Meir, the Mekayim Be'vafapecha Yashu Negdecha, your eyelids are straight before you. It probably means that he was able to see it, to visualize it. So it's as if he knew it so well that it was like visual. He could see it. Yeah.
Is there a concept of a kosher and non-kosher Megillah, like a Sefer Torah or something?
Yeah, but it's the laws of Megillah are much more lenient. So it's probably harder to find the non-kosher Megillah. Amalei, the first thing a Sefer writes is a Megillah. And then, so the first one is always like really a mess. It's probably still kosher, but it's a mess. They don't know how to keep it clean. It's the letters at the beginning. And as it goes on to the end, you start to see the letters are nicer. If you want a cheap Megillah, you get his first one. So a lot of erasing and Amalei Rami Bar Chama Rabbi Yirmiyah Midifti. Rami Bar Chama says to Rabbi Yirmiyah, what is the meaning of this verse? Amalai, so Rabbi Yirmiyah Midifti says to Rami Bar Chama, Elu Divrei Torah. It's referring to Divrei Torah. The Ksibu Hisif Einecha Boi Veinenu. He blinks and it disappears. It means if you don't review, forget it. But nevertheless, Reb Meir had it clear. We know that Reb Meir was a Sefer. That we know. We have other sources. Sefer Torah Shel Reb Meir said something else. Or instead of or with an aleph instead of or with the ayin. The what they put on, the garments that they put on in Gan Eden. Yeah. Okay, Rav Chisda Ashkechel Rav Chananel Davikosov Svarm Shleiman Aksap. Rav Chisda finds Rav Chananel. Yeah, that's not so common. We have a Rabbeinu Chananel on the side, but that's one of the Ga'inim, the end of the Ga'inim, like Rabbeinu Gershon. We have a Rabbeinu Chananel. This is Rabbeinu Chananel is a Moira, probably in Bavel. Rav Chananel. Davikosov Svarm Shleiman Aksav. He was writing, but he didn't have a text that he was copying from. Amrlei Ruya Kol Torah Kol Dikosov Al Picha. The truth is, you know everything. You know the whole. You could write the whole Torah. However, El Kacham Chachamim, but you should still follow the instructions. Also Lichta Veisacher Shleiman Aksav. They said we're not allowed to write like that. Midakamar Kol Torah Kol Shetikosov Al Picha Mechlal Dem Yisharn Heinetzlei. He tells him that you could write the whole Torah like this. That means obviously he has it in front of his eyes. It's clear. Problem is that he still tells him that you're not allowed to do it. But Reb Meir Kasa, but Reb Meir that we said also knew the whole thing. He said he was allowed to do it. So what is this? Favoritism? He's allowed to. So it says Shasat Chakshani. No, Reb Meir didn't have a Megillah. He didn't have anything. It was Purim. He needed a Megillah. So he wrote the Megillah. Yeah.
That sounds like it's like a lichat chila b'diavad thing.
Right. Shasat Chak.
That expression a lot.
Shasat Chak. There's a statement somewhere. Shasat Chak b'diavad. Yeah, there's a statement like that. That's why things that are b'diavad, okay. B'diavad means after it was done. But you can't do anything b'diavad. After it was done, but nevertheless, that rule is applied in Shasat Chak. When you have a time of distress, you don't have, certain circumstances, you can rely on it. Okay, Abaya Shari Le Debei Bar Chavu or Havu. Abaya allowed this yeshiva to write tefillin mezuzahs, not looking in the text. Come on, who does that go like? Ki hai Tana, like the following Tana. The Tanya was taught in the Brayso Rabbi Yirmiyah Mishum Rabbeinu. Does anyone have a comment who Rabbeinu is for Rabbi Yirmiyah? Is that Rav or is that Rabbi Yochanan? Rabbi Yirmiyah says the name of Rabbeinu. What does it say over there?
One master.
The name of a master.
Rabbi Yehuda Nasi in the Quran.
Oh, you think so? In the Quran it says Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
How does he get to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi? I don't know. Oh, the Tanya. Rabbi Yirmiyah Omer Mishum Rabbeinu. It can't be the same Rabbi Yirmiyah that we know. It's a different Rabbi Yirmiyah. Isn't that interesting? What does he say? Tefillin and mezuzahs nichtavish leimin aksav. Tefillin and mezuzahs are written without looking inside the text. You could write the tefillin and mezuzah. Bein tzrichim sirtet. They don't need sirtet. Tefillin and mezuzahs. Really? Tefillin and mezuzahs don't need sirtet. We said that they do. They don't need sirtet is the scoring of the lines. V'hilchas tefillin ein tzrichim sirtet, mezuzah tzrichim sirtet. We have a halacha here. That tefillin do not require sirtet. You look at Taisvis, Pirush Rabbeinu Tam Dechein halacha. You see that tefillin don't need sirtet. However, mezuzah does need sirtet. Idi vidi nechtav shleim and aksav, and both of them could be written without having a text there. You could just read it. My timer. What's the reason? Migras, Grisen. Everyone knows it by heart. Shema. What about Kadishli? Yeah, it's a good question. They must have known that also. How do they know that? From Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin. Okay. If it's written in a different ink. So the Gemara says Sam is Sama.
The circuits is just the scoring, right?
Yeah.
So what does that have to do with whether or not you remember
Nothing.
something by heart?
Nothing.
Oh.
Doesn't have to do. It's two separate halachas. What is Sam? It's another type of ink that's not acceptable. It's Sama. Rashi says it's orpiment. It's actually in the Koran. It says that it's orpiment, which is arsenic, yellowish thing.
Yeah.
Arsenic sulfide. It's an orange yellow ink. Sikra. What's Sikra? Amar Rabba Barbachana Sakarta Shma. It's called Sakarta. It's a red ink. Kumas is kuma. It's a resin from a tree. Yeah. I'm imagining that it's yellow, but that doesn't mean that it is. Kankantime is charsa de ushkipi. It's a black that's used for shoes, and it's a shoemaker's black. Ushkipi is a shoemaker, and charsa is a type of black. I don't know what's wrong with that. Why is that not acceptable?
It says here, this dye is invalid because it cannot be erased.
Oh, you need to have an ink that could be erased. It has to be able to be erased. Yeah, one time saw a cipher was putting on a display. So it says it has to be permanent ink. I was a little surprised. It was, it doesn't have to, it's on the contrary, it's not allowed to be permanent ink. Unless what he meant was, it has to be erasable. Maybe he meant permanent, that it doesn't fade or something.
This is on parchment.
Yeah.
Not with like a rubber eraser or anything.
How do you erase from parchment? With a razor blade. Yeah.
Straight.
Yeah, but some of them could get absorbed in and it can't. Diphthera was a type of klaf. The maliach v'kamiach v'layafetz. Maliach, they used salt in the tanning process. They used flour in the tanning process. Kamiach b'mayim. What they used water. Rashi says, but v'layafetz, but they didn't use the gall, which is some sort of like acid that they would put on it. Yeah, they didn't use that. V'layafetz. Niyar was machka. It sounds like that's a type of papyrus. A niyar is a paper. Rashi says it was made from grass with glue. It sounds like it's a type of papyrus. Ad should take suv ashuris. The Megillah has to be written ashuris. Ashuris means in Hebrew, right? The ksiv keksavim chizmana, as it's written in there, and it should be kept as it's written in its time, and it should be kept in its time. Ala sefer b'diyah, it has to be written in a scroll, and it has to be used using black ink. Minalan, where do we know this from? Asya ksiva, we learn it from of this verbal analogy. It says ksiva in two places. Ksiv hach, over here it says batichtei Esther Malka. Esther Malka wrote. Ksiv hasam, and over there it says by Yirmiyah, it says v'yamlam baruch mipiv yikarei. From his mouth he will read Eli mipiv yikarei Eli eskol advar me'ela. In his mouth, he read to me all of these things. And I wrote it in a book with ink. Okay, so it says over here in a book means in a scroll. With ink means that the Megillah needs to be written in a scroll with ink. Okay, we have an interesting Mishnah. A new Mishnah. Shahalach Lakrach. Remember we said that on the 14th is the obligation to read the Megillah in a regular city. But in a walled city, you read the Megillah on the 15th. So let's say someone from a regular city, he goes to a walled city. You could avoid Purim. He goes on the 14th to Yerushalayim. He goes to Tel Aviv or something for the 15th, and then he misses Purim. Ben Yishalach Lekrach, Ben Krach Shahalach Leir. And if someone from Yerushalayim that goes to Tel Aviv or something, if he's going to return, then Karikim Kaimai. Then he reads like his place. There's a lot of details here. The Gemara is going to explain. Then he reads like the place, like his own hometown. Vimlav, but if not, then Karimim, then he reads with the place that he's in. We'll see in the Gemara the details. Mehechen Karia said the Megillah. This is like not related to what we just said, but from where does a person start to read the Megillah of Yetzbi Yedei Chivasai, and then he fulfills his obligation? Reb Meir Merkula. You have to read the entire Megillah. Vayiv Me'achashverish until the end, till the chapter 10. Malchei, what is it? Madei Uparas or something. Rabbi Yehuda Mish Yehudi. Rabbi Yehuda says no, you can start from Ish Yehudi, right? That's is that chapter 2 somewhere? And Rabbi Yossi Yomer Me'achar Dvar Meila from chapter 3. You don't have to start from the beginning. Start from chapter 3. Yeah, we read the whole Megillah. Yeah, Amar Rava. Rava says, Rava goes back to explain the first part of the Mishnah. What's happening over here is that if you have someone from a walled city, from Yerushalayim, he happens to be in Tel Aviv or somewhere, or some other city, and that's not walled, and he's there on the 14th. So we say that if he's going to go back to his town, then he doesn't have to read it that night, even though he's there. Everyone's running to shul, and he's like, I don't have to read it. I'm going home. So that's because he's going back that night. But let's say he's not going back that night. He's staying overnight. Then then he has to read together with them. He can't say, I'm not going to shul. Amar Rava Mina Mina Rava says, where do we know this from? The Ksiv, because it's written, therefore, the Jewish people that are in open cities, that dwell in open cities. It's a little repetitive. So, Michti, Ksiv Yehudim Aprasim. 1 second. it says the Jews from the open cities. What do you have to then repeat and say that dwell in open cities? Jews from open cities that dwell in open cities. We got it the first time. Hakamashma is coming to teach us the paros ben Yomi nikra paros, that you have to stay there a whole day to be part of that city. So if you're staying there that night, then you consider part of that city. But if you're not staying there that night, I don't know why it works with. I don't know why it works with staying the whole night. Why doesn't it work with? Why doesn't it end by day? Like usually a Jewish day, we're looking for someone to be there. One day is considered you belong to that city. Right. But now we're saying that day ends in the morning.
What's the same?
Yeah, so it's a little different than the way we usually.
For coming.
It doesn't say midnight. But yeah.
The whole night is
2 a.m.
No, but it sounds like it's Asad Lachser Belela Yadalit. It sounds like it's the Kaidam Amad Shachar before dawn. Yeah, we don't end the day at midnight. We're gonna have another Gemara about this. Basically, usually our day would start at the night, but here it's doing the day all the way through the night. I'm
Like
sorry.
being pure, I think you could go to a mikveh in the morning, but you don't become pure until like
Right.
So
But here we're doing a little bit more. Here he was
it's
there
the
in the afternoon. He has to stay the whole night for him to be part of that city.
this is residence requirement.
Yeah, this is to be a resident.
Residence.
That's why
Yeah.
the reason when you do a mikvah before morning, if you're in like a natural body of water, you have to take 3 people.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Why?
Because it's dangerous.
Oh, okay. Okay, fine. Okay.
Maybe it's what you're saying also, that it would be more a sign. If it's clear that he's going to leave that night, then nobody's going to think that he's avoiding his obligation.
Oh. It looks like it's establishing him as a resident. That's what it looks like. Rashi adds in another point of view. Interesting. He says, let's say someone from a regular city that goes to Yerushalayim. When does he go there? Rashi says, he's not going to be there by day. Let's say he's not going to be there by day on the 15th. Then he has to read it on the 14th. But if he will be there on the 15th, then he doesn't have to read it on the 14th. Yeah, so he just waits. Yeah, you can avoid it. If someone has a plan of doing, I don't know how it's going to work. If someone has a plan of going, does it mean just a plan itself, or does he have to actually be there? I don't know. Okay, the Gemara says, Mukaf minalan. Where do we know that the same thing applies the other way? You only told me what it means to be a resident of an open city. How do we know what it means to be a resident of a walled city? Well, it says Svarahu, it's logical. Paras ben Yom Makar, Paras Mukaf ben Yom Makar, Mukaf. It's logical. If it takes you one day to be a resident of this type of city, then it will take you one day to be a resident of the other type of city. Amar Rava. Rava also says, Ben Kfar Shalach Le'ir. Let's say you have someone from a village. I remember the village had a very interesting halacha. They were able to read the Megillah on the 11th, 12th, 13th as well, if they ended up, if that day was a Monday or a Thursday, because of that was the day that they would come to bring supplies, or maybe that's the day that the Beis Din was open to the cities. So Ben Kfar Shahalach Le'ir. He ends up in a city, right? He's a villager that ends up in a city. So Ben Kach Karimam, he always reads together with the city. We're talking about the city of that reads on the 14th, an open city. My time, what's the reason? Hi Kibnei Yair, boy Lemikri, Varabanu de Kilo ala Kfarim. Ala Kfarim. He was anyway supposed to read on the 14th. They just did a leniency. So he's gonna have to read it twice. Kadesh, it's not Kadeh, they have to edit this. Mipnei Shemaspikim Mayim Umazan Lachem Shebekrachim. This was a leniency that we did for them because they supply water for the cities, water and food for the cities. So we did them in return. We allow them that they don't have to travel twice to the city to hear the Megillah. So Hani Mili, when was that leniency? That's only if he's in his village. Then he has to read it with the city. Abaya has a question. Yeah.
From 3 minutes ago, when you said it's planned to be in the city, why isn't that the same thing when we say with a fast day that you plan to fast the next day? Why don't you just use it as much intent? In other words, if he had that plan in his mind to be.
You're asking on a fast that you don't have really have to
saying,
say
in
it.
order to fast, to eat in the morning,
Oh.
you have to have the intent.
Oh,
from the night
so maybe it
before.
works. You're saying maybe the plan works.
So I'm
maybe.
saying maybe that's the same concept.
Maybe. Okay. Isve Abaya is a question. Ben krach shalach leir, ben kach kari kim kaimai. This is a difficult brisa. Someone from a walled city that goes to a regular city, he has to read like the walled city. 1 second. Ben kach, whether he's returning, whether or not, this messes up everything that we just learned. It says ben krach sal kadaitach. Do you really think we're talking about someone from a walled city? It has to do with if he's going to return, that we said before, that it's not just like automatic, because it says in his passport where he lives. Elalav ben kfar. We have to adjust the brisa. Doesn't mean someone from a walled city, it means someone from a village. Someone from a village. He has to read like the city. The problem is here it says he reads like his own place. So it says, Valav tirutzi metartzis tani kairi imahim. Didn't we already fix up this brisa? Once we're fixing up the brisa, we'll continue to fix it up. We'll switch it back to actually saying almost nothing new. And we'll just say that a villager can say, has to read the Megillah like he's in the city when he is in the city. Okay, which is what we learned before anyway. From where do you start reading the Megillah? Where does the Megillah start? So, in the Mishnah, we had 3 opinions. We had Reb Meir said everything, Reb Yehuda says Ish Yehudi, and Reb Yosi says Achar Dvar Meila. Tanya, we have a brisa. Reb Shimon Bar Yochai Yomer. On the side it says Reb Shimon ben Elazar. Okay, it's a little later. One generation later.
It says Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai.
You have Reb Shimon Yochai, I have Reb Shimon Yochai also. But on the side, I have Reb Shimon ben Elazar, they adjusted. He says, Mi balai lahahu, from balai lahu. That we didn't have in the Mishnah. Balai lahu is that night, remember, in between the parties. Where am I? I'm on 19a, in the middle of the page. So that night, we'll see in a minute why that's significant. Rabbi Yechanan says that all of these different opinions, 4 opinions now, they all are learning from one pasuk. It says, Vatichte Esther Amalka, Mordechai Yehudias Kol Taikif. Esther Amalka, Esther the queen, and Mordechai the Jew, they wrote all of the strength, all of the, what's the word that they use there? The power? Acts, all the acts of power. Mandamar Kula, the one that says that you have to read the entire Megillah, he says, you want to read from the party, to read the whole thing, start from the beginning, the acts of power of Achashverosh. Mandamar Mish Yehudi, the one that says you start from, there was a Jewish person, this middle of chapter 2, Mordechai, you want to see the acts of power of Mordechai. And those, what are the acts of power that she's referring to? Acts of Whose power? Mandamar me'achar advar meila. The one that says that you start from chapter 3, then Tekva Shel Haman. It's the acts of power of Haman. Mandamar b'laylahu. One that says that you start from b'laylahu, which is probably chapter 6 or something, or chapter 5. So Tekva Shel Nes. That's the strength of the miracle. Yeah, that's why the Balkaira raises his voice when he says b'laylahu. That's because that's when the miracle begins.
We're missing an important opinion. The strength
What?
of
Big sentence, right?
the power of Esther.
Oh, yeah. Where would that be?
I don't know. When she decides to, when she goes to the palace. I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe it's chauvinist. Okay, I don't know. Mandamar balaylahu take v'shalnei. Okay, Rav Huna Amar mihacha. Rav Huna says from here, Umaro al kacha magi aleim. You see, Rabbi Yochanan said it's from Esther. Esther Mordechai wrote called the acts of power. Rav Huna brings another pasuk. He says, what did they see to do this? So what happened to them to make this holiday? What did they see to do this, to enact, to make this? And what happened? Mandamar kula marach hashverish. So we're looking at what did they see and what happened. What did Achashverosh see? That he started to use the vessels of the Beis Hamikdash. It's because of this. Because he saw that the Jewish people, 70 years went by, they weren't redeemed. He says, okay, it's all over. He takes out the vessels. And then what happens? Because of that, the Katel Vashti killed Vashti. Okay. That's the first opinion that says that you have to read from the very beginning of the Megillah. According to the one that says you start from chapter 2, there was a Jewish person. What did Mordechai see that he should incite Haman? Al-Kacha. It's because of the following. The Shavi Nafshei Avodah Zarah, because he made himself into an idol. Ma'gi aleim. What happened because of that? This Rachish Nisa, we had a miracle. Mandamar Me'achad Varmela, the one that says you start from the chapter 3, which is where Haman is raised to power. Mara Haman Sheniskani B'chala Yehudim. What did Haman see that he is jealous of all the Jews? Or he becomes angry at all the Jews. Al Kacha was because Mishum the Mordechai le'yishtachave, because Mordechai doesn't bow down. Ma'gi aleim. So what happened to them? They get hung, him and his sons, on a tree. Mandamar balaylahu, the one that says you start from that night, chapter 5 or something. Mara Achashverosh lavia sefer zechrenos. What did Achashverosh see? That he should bring the book of remembrance, the ledger, the royal ledger. Al kacha, the following. There's a minti Esther lahaman b'hadei, that Esther invited Haman. What happened because of that? This Rachish Nisa, they had the miracle. Amar Rab Chelbay, Amar Rab Chamer Bar Goy, Amar Rav, halacha kedivrei ha'imer kula. The halacha is, this is what we had before from Rab Chelbay, that the halacha is that you have to read the whole Megillah, according to the opinion that says you read the whole thing. Who is that? Reb Meir's of you. And even according to the one that says from Mish Yehudi, kula. Even if you don't have to read the whole thing, you still need the whole Megillah there. Amar Rab Chelbay, Amar Rab Chamer Bar Goy, Amar Rav, Megillah Nikras Sefer Nikras Igeres. Rab Chelbay also says in the name of Rab Chamer Bar Goy, in the name of Rav, that a Megillah is called a book, and it's also called a letter. Nikras Sefer, it's called a Sefer Shem Tafer B'chuti Pishtim Psula. It's coming to tell me that you're not allowed to use the threads. It's not probable that you'll be able to get an entire Megillah on one strip of parchment. So you're going to use a few strips of parchment. You'll sew it together. The sewing of the parchment together has special halachas. You're not allowed to use flax, linen to sew it together. You have to use the sinews of an animal. So it says it's similar to a sefer Torah, that you can't use linen. If you use linen to sew the two things together, it's possible. But it's also called a letter. That just 3 of them would be enough. You don't need the halachas of a sefer Torah, which are more strict than that. I'm not sure how many you need, but it doesn't. 3 would be too little. 3 stitches. Yeah, different opinions how this works. Amar Rav Nachman, Sefer Torah, you need more than 3. Yeah. Moshe, do you remember how many, what's the difference to Sefer Torah? I'll have to look it up. Okay. Amar Rav Nachman, Levad Shiyum Shalashin. Nachman says that those 3 have to be spaced into thirds. Yeah. We have a lot of things interesting in the Gemara that thirds. It divides things into thirds. Probably based on the Greek number for beauty. You know, the phi, right? Phi, something that was thirds. So a lot of things are thirds. The tzitzis is thirds. Okay. Amar Rab Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, maybe the lulav and esrog. No, that would be a quarter. It's 1/4 taller, the lulav. Than Amar Rab Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Akayrei b'Megillah ksuva bein aksuvim layatza. Yeah, you can't take out a Tanakh or a scroll, or like 5 Megillah scroll, and just read the Megillah from amongst the other Megillahs or the other writings. You can't do that. It has to be an independent scroll. This seems like if the font changes or the parchment is taller, so you would or shorter, then it would be clear that that was a separate piece. Then that would be acceptable, even though it's all combined in one scroll. But if it's just regular together, okay, where are we starting today? We'll start over here. That's not kosher.
Imagine having like a Tanakh scroll form would be huge. So,
Yeah.
it's all together.
In some shows they use a scroll for the Haftarah. I think the Gra held like that or something.
There's one that was just up for
Oh.
sale in the Judaica auction.
Oh, that-
Prior to now. So it's 3.5 inches.
Yeah.
Oh, Tanakh and the scroll? Uh-huh.
The scroll was 3.5 inches entire Tanakh. I didn't bid on it.
Is that useful anyway? Yeah.
Yeah, if you follow that opinion, then it would be useful. Yeah.
We used to have that as thing with across the street.
Oh, yeah. and-
Rabbi Finkelstein lived here, who was below, he had in his house a scroll with every.
Wow.
You went in the room, you saw scrolls.
Uh-huh.
They would use that.
Did they read Eicha from a scroll? Do you remember that?
To tell you the truth.
You don't
I
remember.
saw them in his house, but
No.
they didn't really daven across the street.
But when you daven at the Young Israel or something, it was Eicha read from a scroll.
No, they just.
It's just the Chumash. That's the because I remember we needed a Balkaira once for Eicha in Rhode Island. So they asked, there was a bacher in the yeshiva. There was the Providence. What was it called? The Beis Medrash in Providence. I forget what it's called. Anyway, so the bacher was all nervous. He said, "I have to prepare Eicha." So I said, "They use a Chumash." He's like, "They use a Chumash. Oh, I can do that." Big difference. Yeah, probably a 12-hour difference, right? Okay, so Amar, that's only if the spacing isn't different. Levi Bar Shmuel Havika Kari Kamid Rav Yehuda b'Megillah. Levi Bar Shmuel is reading in front of Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda is a student of Rav and a student of Shmuel, and I don't think it's. I wonder if Levi Bar Shmuel is Shmuel. It can't be Shmuel's son. I thought Shmuel didn't have any sons. So it must be someone else. And he's reading Megillah Aksuva Ben Aksuvim. He's really reading it from a Megillah that's written amongst the other writings. So that wasn't. You're not supposed to do that. Amalei. They said, "Ari Amra Kari Ben Megillah Aksuva Ben Aksuvim LaYatza." You're not Yaitza. Okay, I guess he accepted that. Amar B'chia Barabba Amar Rabbi Yochanan Akar b'Megillah Aksuv Ben Aksuvim LaYatza u'Machal Amaycha b'Tzibur Shano. Machal Amaycha is an expression that means they hit the halacha on the head. That means they restricted it to a certain criteria. They said, really, you're not supposed to do this. But then they said they hit the halacha on the head and they made it limited that it's only if you're reading it in public. But if you're reading it in private, it's not a problem. You
So
can
had
read.
to make up a new saying because it can use Makaba Patish and use somewhere else.
Yeah. Okay. And the Mendy and the Golem. You remember Mendy and the Golem, the comic?
No, but you
So-
do, 'cause you always call it.
So they had a basketball team. It was called the Globe Schleppers. So they said, why couldn't you get a better name? So all the good names were taken. Okay. So V'amar Rab Chia bar Abba Rabbi Yochanan Shir HaTefer Halach L'Moshe Misinai. Very interesting. You're not supposed to sew it up all the way to the top. If you have the two cloth, you do the stitches, but you leave a space on the top that you don't sew it like from end to end. The reason for that is that if you're wrapping, when you're tightening the scroll, so if you tighten it too much, you start to see that it's getting pulled on the top. You see it's being pulled. Then you'll stop tightening. You say, oh, be careful. If it was tied all the way to the top, when you would tighten it, you wouldn't notice that it's being pulled. And then you can actually tighten it too much and it could tear. So you want to leave it a little bit that it should be recognizable that you over tightened it. Okay. So it says that Shir HaTefer is halach l'Moshe Misinai. However, they knocked this halacha on the head. It wasn't really halach l'Moshe Misinai. It was just so that the sages said that so that it shouldn't tear. And now we have Rab Chia bar Abba in the name of Rabbi Yochanan again. He's a very important student of Rabbi Yochanan. The Gemara says in Brachas every 30 days he reviewed everything that he learned, and Rabbi Yochanan would correct him. Yeah, you're gonna have to explain this to me. If there was a drop, you see, Moshe was supposed to go into a cleft in the rock, and Elio also. It says it was the same rock. When Elio was, he didn't eat for 40 days, and then he walked. This is where Hashem passes by, and it's not in the wind. Remember that? Not in the wind. Not like Barash Hashem. Kol Dama Daka. Hashem is in the still, silent voice or something. So over there was passing by it by the rock. So it says that if there would have been a drop opened by that rock, then they wouldn't have been able to survive because of the light. Yeah, I thought that it was a cleft in the rock, that he was standing in the entranceway. Here it sounds like no, it was like covered. Maybe it means he was covered with the hand because it says that it was samti kapai. What does it say? He put his hand. Put his hand over. So Hashem's hand, whatever that means. Okay. V'amar Rab Chia bar Abba Rabbi Yochanan ma'idksiv v'aleim k'chol advarim asher dibar Hashem imachem, and on them is all the things that Hashem spoke. That's the rocks that he wrote on. Bahar Malamid shehereyu HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'Moshe diktukei Torah diktukei sefer masha sefer masirin l'chadesh ma'nio mikra Megillah. This means that Hashem showed Moshe. We had a Gemara like this in Menachos, I think. Hashem showed Moshe diktukei Torah, all the details that come out, all of the halachas that come out from every time it says es or it says gam, we learn out halachas from each one. And the Ktukei Seifrim is what we learn out from the Mishnah, from the teachings, and also what the Seifrim are going to initiate later on, and that's referring to Mikra Megillah. So Moshe Rabbeinu already knew about Mikra Megillah, the reading of the Megillah. And the Gemara in Menachos, it was that he shows him Rabbi Akiva that was darshaning all these halachas, and he says, "Why don't you?" Moshe Rabbeinu felt bad over there that he didn't know all of those things, and then there was a certain point where they asked the question. Rabbi Akiva said, "I don't know. That's a tradition from Moshe." They felt better.
Darshaning a mitzvah is what?
He was expounding on the different crowns on the letters.
It's interesting that he's saying that he showed stuff that would include more as opposed to exclude.
Uh-huh.
Rashi says we don't include. He says and to. He says this refers to the implications right from word to oh,
And the exclusions. Yeah.
Oh, I thought it wasn't included. So
Yeah.
it is from
All the
there to
details.
there, everything.
Right.
Rabbi, in that story with Rabbi Akiva, the thing that Moshe didn't know, that's what Rabbi Akiva said was Halakha Moshe Misinai, or was something else that
No, I
Moshe knew?
think they asked. It says Moshe Rabbeinu didn't know the answers to the things that they were discussing. He didn't know the things that they were discussing. And then there was one question where Rabbi Akiva says, "Oh, that's a tradition from Moshe."
And that's something that Moshe did know, I guess.
No, it doesn't say that he knew that either.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't say.
Doesn't say. Okay.
Yeah.
He just felt good.
Yeah. Hakol ksherim likros es Megillah. Everyone is acceptable to read the Megillah. Chutz mecheresh sheita v'katan. Except for a cheresh. Usually a cheresh is a deaf mute. There's a slight problem with that here because we just said that he's not allowed to read the Megillah. If he's mute, he wouldn't be able to read the Megillah anyway. So we're talking about a cheresh that's just plain deaf. And a shaita, an imbecile, and the katan, and a child, the minor. They can't read the Megillah. Sounds like women can read the Megillah, no? That's for those groups, right? Those women's Megillah reading groups. Rabbi Yehuda machshir b'katan. Rabbi Yehuda allows a katan to read the Megillah. The Gemara didn't discuss, the Mishnah didn't discuss what happens if a cheresh does read the Megillah. What happens then? It says that he's not supposed to. What happens if a katan does read the Megillah? Is it good b'diavad? It doesn't say it. So man tana cheresh diavad nami loy. The Gemara starts off. The Gemara is assuming that the Mishnah means b'diavad. That it's b'diavad also not good. Possible. You have to go hear it again. So who's the author that holds that if a cheresh reads the Megillah, which opinion is that you have to read it again? Amar Rav Masna, Rav Yosi. Rav Masna says it's Rav Yosi. Rav Masna, I think, was a student of Shmuel or a student of Rav. HaKoresh Shema v'lo yishmei la'ozna. The Tanana was started in the Mishnah. HaKoresh Shema v'lo yishmei la'ozna yatsa. Rav Yosi ma lo yatsa. If someone recites the Shema, but he doesn't articulate it, he doesn't hear the words that he's saying, doesn't enunciate the words. So the first opinion says, okay, it's good enough. He thought about it, he concentrated on the words, and that's good. And Rabbi Yosi says no. Rabbi Yosi says you have to actually hear it. So Rabbi Yosi is the one that would say that a deaf person is not Yaitza the Megillah even b'diavad, just like the Shema, because you have to actually hear it. The Gemara says, "Mimai the Rabbi Yosi v'diavad namilai." How do you know it's Rabbi Yosi? That our Mishnah is Rabbi Yosi. Maybe Dilma Rabbi Yehudi lachatchilu delay. Diavad shapidami. Maybe the Mishnah means that you're just not supposed to, but you Yaitza. I mean, this whole thing was like an assumption of what the Mishnah is saying, that the Mishnah didn't say anything about the Diavad. Maybe it's really the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yehuda maybe holds that you're allowed to read it, that you're not allowed to read it, but b'diavad you're Yaitza. Gemara says, don't think like that. We know for sure that a shaita v'katan are not Yaitza. You put them all in the same category, let's assume that they're all the same. So if a shaita, an imbecile, and a child are not Yaitza b'diavad, so the cheresh is also not Yaitza b'diavad. But Dilma, the Gemara says, hakadisa. How do you know that that's, you have to wrap it all up and say that they all have the same halacha? Maybe they have separate halachas. So lachatchila, they all shouldn't read. B'diavad, maybe they have different halachas. So it says, midik tani seifa, this, you can't say this. It says, Rabbi Yehuda machshir b'katan. Rabbi Yehuda allows a katan to read lachatchila. Mechlal, the reish alav Rabbi Yehuda. That means he's arguing on the Reisha. I'm skipping the words Vidil Makula Rabbi Yehudi. Midami Reisha Lepsula v'Seifa L'Kshera. You can't say that it's the same author because the Reisha says that it's puzzle and the Seifa Rabbi Yehuda says that it's kosher. So the Reisha cannot be Rabbi Yehuda. So finished. Back to the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, which would mean that it's puzzle b'di'evet if the Cheirish reads it. It says no, Vidil Makula Rabbi Yehudi. It's not necessarily so. We can still put say that the whole Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda. V'trei gavni katan, and there's two types of children. Let's take a look. Trei gavni katan ketani la v'chsori mechzer v'achi ketani. The Mishnah is missing words. You add some words in, we can fix this up. It says hakol kshem likus Megillah chutz mecher sheita v'katan. Everyone can read the Megillah except for the deaf, the imbecile, and the child. When do we say that this is acceptable? This is not acceptable. That it's chutz, except for that's the child that did not reach the age of education. It means he's not old enough to read the Megillah or to practice reading the Megillah. But a child that has already reached the age of education, I feel lechatchila, you can read it even lechatchila. It's Rabbi Yehuda machshir b'katan because Rabbi Yehuda allows it. It's all the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Now we have to go back and analyze what would be that by the cheirish. If it's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, then it's potential. But we could possibly say that the cheirish, the deaf one, is yaitze b'di'evet. It says b'mayu kim to Rabbi Yehuda. How are you establishing the Mishnah? You're saying that it's Rabbi Yehuda, and b'di'evet, it's going to be mutter. After the fact, it would be acceptable. Ella hadatani Rabbi Yehuda Breder Rav Shimon ben Pazi. The problem is we have a brisa. The brisa says that Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rav Shimon ben Pazi, taught Cheirish hamedaber ve'ena shemei torim lechatchila. He's lechatchila. Lechatchila is allowed to take truma. A cheirish, a deaf person. He speaks, but he can't hear. Now, the problem with taking truma is so what? You take a little grain and you put it over there. Problem is that you also have to say a bracha. Now, are you yaitze the bracha if you can't hear it? So, Rabbi Yehuda would say, the way we're learning until now, Rabbi Yehuda would say, well, you're yaitze b'di'evet, but l'chatchila you're not allowed to. That's what he would say, because that's the way we're learning the Mishnah by Megillah, that l'chatchila you're not allowed to read the Megillah, the cheirish. But if he does, he's yaitze. So we have a brisa that says that l'chatchila a cheirish is allowed to take truma. That means he's l'chatchila allowed to say the bracha. Now who does that follow? Not Rabbi Yehuda, not Rabbi Yossi. Mani, who would that follow? Rabbi Yehuda. If it's Rabbi Yehuda, the evid and l'chatchila light, then it's only b'di evid it works. It means after the fact. Rabbi Yossi, the evid namila, and it's Rabbi Yossi. It says even after the fact it doesn't work. Elamai Rabbi Yehuda. It must be that it's Rabbi Yehuda v'afil l'chatchila. And it's even the Chatchila, so it's Rabbi Yehuda can't be the author of our Mishnah. It must be that Rabbi Yehuda's view is that Lechatchila the Cheirish is allowed to read the Megillah, and he's not mentioned in our Mishnah.
But what if somebody else answers something? It's still not good.
If the Cheirish, if we would follow the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, let's say, then the person that's saying it was not even obligated. It would be totally exempt. If for him to say a bracha, the person listening would not be yaitza.
No, according to Rabbi Yehuda.
According to Rabbi Yehuda, that would say that b'di'evet it worked, then the person listening would probably also yaitza b'di'evet. Yeah.
By the way, I always thought it was b'di'evet with a base. Why is it with a?
Oh, it has it di'evet. V'di'evet, and we're talking about di'evet, the avad after the fact. That's the word is avad, is that it was performed. So v'di'evet. Oh yeah. Oh, that's 15. Okay. The Gemara says, Ella hadatanya. If that's the case, we have another brisa. It says, Lo yivarachad and birchas hamazon b'libay. Person should not bench just in his heart. That means just by thinking. He has to say the words. Vimberach Yatza, but he fulfilled his obligation. Now, you just told me a minute ago that Rabbi Yehuda holds that l'chatchila you're allowed to l'chatchila a cherish is allowed to read the Megillah. And the l'chatchila a cherish, a deaf person, is allowed to take truma and recite the bracha. Rabbi Yossi holds even b'diavad it doesn't work. So we have like polar machlekes. Now all of a sudden we have a Mishnah that says see, he's not hearing it. So we're thinking he's not hearing it. He's saying it's only in his heart, so he's comparable to the deaf person that's not hearing
I
it.
thought that meant say it by heart as opposed to reading it.
No, the libai, that meant that he's not enunciating it. In his mind, he's saying it. Mani, lay Rabbi Yehuda v'lay Rabbi Yossi. Doesn't fit with Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi, because Rabbi Yehuda says l'chatchila you're allowed to, and Rabbi Yossi says even b'diavad it's no good. Rabbi Yehuda feel l'chatchila it's you're allowed to. Rabbi Yossi feel b'diavad nami like it's Rabbi Yossi then even b'diavad it's not. Taisvus asks the obvious question. Well, he's not asking the obvious question. The obvious question is, who's the author of our Mishnah? If you're just quoting another brisa to complicate things that we don't have an author for it. Our Mishnah we don't have an author for it either. Oh no, we do have an author. The author of the Mishnah would be Rabbi Yossi, and it's b'diavad. It's no good. That's what we would say. The Mishnah our Mishnah we could explain, but the problem is by Birkas Hamazon you can't explain it because it says b'diavad it is good. Just l'chatchila. The Gemara now on the top of Daf Chaf says li'olam Rabbi Yehuda. Really, it is Rabbi Yehuda. Va'afil l'chatchila. And l'chatchila, you're right. You're taka allowed to go ahead and do it. V'lay kasha, but there's still no problem. Hadi day, hadi rabbi. Depends. Rabbi Yehuda has a teacher that he quotes from his teacher as well. His own opinion is that l'chatchila you're really allowed to recite you can do truma, a cherish can do truma even l'chatchila.
They both had the same teacher, Rabbi Akiva.
Rabbi Yossi also has the same teacher. Yeah, it's going to be a different teacher. The Tanya was taught in a brisa. Rabbi Daim Mishum Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, it says Akayre Shema Tzarich She'ashmiel Oznei. Someone that recites the Shema has to hear it. Shneimar Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Hashmiel Az L'cha Ma Shemaitim Mipicha. You have to enunciate it. If you don't hear it, you're not yaitza. And Reb Meir Aimer Asher Nechim Mitzav Chayim Alavecha Achar Kaman Aslev Hinen Advarim. Reb Meir says you don't have to hear it. You just have to think it. So the teacher of Rabbi Yehuda holds that you do have to hear it. He himself holds that you don't have to hear it. His teacher says you do it. So when you quote Rabbi Yehuda saying something, it's not a problem. It's Rabbi Yehuda in the name of his teacher. In other words, the Birkas Hamazon that says that l'chatchila you're not supposed to bench by without enunciating it, that would be, and the evidence it is good, that would be Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Yeah. Okay. Have a question?
The first Shema,
Shema, you're right.
everyone usually say it at different times.
Yeah. Whenever you want to fill the mitzvah of Shema, you have to enunciate to say it.
Right, but they also said you have to hear.
Yeah, that's what we're referring to. When you say enunciate, we mean that you have to hear yourself saying it.
Hear yourself.
Yeah.
If you're in the subway or the crowd or in shul when everyone's talking, you don't hear it, but you're saying it because their stuff is coming in from other sides.
No, but usually you hear yourself. As long if you're saying it out loud, you'll usually hear yourself. No. Okay, hashtadas. In other words, you have to actually say it. Hashtadas lahachi. If this is the case, now afilu tema Rabbi Yehuda karabis really, we could really say that Rabbi Yehuda holds like his own teacher, like Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah that says lechatchila you can't. It's only b'diavad that it's good. The problem is that that's going to leave a brisa of truma without an author. We said 1 second. Other Tani Rabbi the Breder Reb Shimon ben Pazi, the brayse about truma that says that lechatchila you're a cheirish is allowed to take truma and recite the bracha. Don't worry about that. That's Reb Meir. We discovered a new opinion when we were quoting Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. We have an opinion of Reb Meir that says you don't have to hear. So good. Now everything works out. We have who's going to be the author of our Mishnah? That's the only thing left. The author of our Mishnah could be Rabbi Yehuda as well. It says that lachatchila you're not, but it's good. Right?
I feel as though if something is di'evid and it's fine, it's mutar, then it seems like people would be kind of lenient about it. Just do
Right. Anything that's b'di'evid,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
think the author of the mission is proving that she wanted to get even with everybody because they left out.
No, it's the opposite. It's they included the women. Anyone is allowed to read.
That's right. She could.
Yeah.
She could.
just not.
Yeah.
Not that.
Yeah. Yeah, You think she would argue with her husband, Reb Meir? Rabbi Yehuda machshir b'katan. Rabbi Yehuda allows the child to read the Megillah. Oh, so now we're back with the problem. If the Mishnah is really Rabbi Yehuda, so then how does he allow the child? We'll have to accept the Chsuri Mechzer v'Afiktani. We'll have to accept that the Mishnah was missing words, and there's two types of children. The child that's not allowed to is before he reaches the age of chinuch. The child that is allowed to is the one that already reached the age of chinuch. Okay, the Tanya was taught in a brayso. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Katan Yisi, I was a child. B'krasi l'mayla me Reb Tarfon. I read the Megillah in front of Reb Tarfon. It was a kainim, belud. Okay, who told you this? I mean, he himself did it. He said, "Who told you this?" He said, "You only know this from what you remember as a child. You can't bring proof from statements that are coming from a child's mind." Now he's saying it when he's older, but he only knew it when he was a child. Yeah, we don't say this by other things. Remember, there was a Gemara somewhere. He says, I remember when I was a child, my father put me on his shoulders. We went to the mikveh and we ate truma, and my friends were calling me Yochanan Eichel Chalas.
There are a few exceptions.
Oh.
One is to say
For challah.
person's yichus.
Uh-huh.
Another is
Uh-huh. Very interesting. Who writes about this? Is this in Chesed Mishpat? The Ardayan, Reb Naftali says that in Chesed Mishpat it describes the exceptions. Another one is remembering father's handwriting. Yeah.
What was the other one?
The other one was by challah, saying that he's a kohen. I remember that my father put me in the mikveh and we ate challah when they got out. Okay, Tanya, studying the brayso. Amar Rebbe says, I was a child and I read the Megillah in front of Rabbi Yehuda. You can't bring a raya from Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda was the one that allows it. Why are you saying you can't bring a raya from Rabbi Yehuda? There's two Rabbi Yehudas. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, when he was a child, he read it in front of Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Loi, who holds that it's allowed. So we said that you can't bring a raya. He holds that it's allowed anyway. You're just repeating his opinion. That's not a proof. From Reb Tarfon and the Zakanim, that was a proof. But we said he's a child. So over here also, but he was a child. Why don't you just say that he's a child? So the Gemara says, Chadavait Kamar. Two problems. First of all, you're a child. And second of all, you say even if you were an adult. But Rabbi Yehuda always held that you're allowed. So there's no proof. Okay. New Mishnah. In Karn. You with me? You can handle? We'll go further. In Kaira Nesa Megillah, you can't read the Megillah. B'lai Malan, you can't do a bris. B'lai Tovlin, you can't go to the mikveh. Blamazin, you can't sprinkle the water. Paraduma, also a woman that's a zava, that she has to wait one day before she could go to the mikveh. She sees one seeing, so she waits one day to see if she's clean, and then she goes to the mikveh. She can't go to the mikveh until sunrise. So all of these halachas begin sunrise. And all of them that were from Alois, that's dawn, that's I guess 72 minutes or something before sunrise. So that's that your yaitzer. So you're supposed to wait for sunrise, but dawn would also be good for the Evet. Minalan, where do you know this? We're just going to bring psukim that are going to mention the word day, and that's going to tell me that it needs to be done by day and it can't be done by night.
Wait, does the woman go in the day?
This is a nida goes at night, but a zava, she can go during the day. Yeah. Now the problem is today we combine nida and zava, and they have the stringencies of both, so they have to go at night, and they count the 7 clean days, which is nida wouldn't. So it has all the problems. Where do we know this? It says in the pasuk, these days are remembered and performed by Yomi in Balayla. It's Balayla light, but not by night. It says Hayamim these days. It means it needs to be done by day. The Gemara says, 1 second. You said the Megillah needs to be read by day. 1 second. We said you have to read it by night. The Gemara says, oh, kiktani adiyim. Easy answer. You do have to read it by night, but we're not talking about the night reading. We're talking about the day reading. The day reading needs to be done by day. You read it twice by night. That's no good. Lay malin chulu, can't do a bris by night. Ksiva by yom mashmini yimal, it needs to be done by day. Lay tayvin lay mazin, you can't go to the mikveh. You can't sprinkle the ksiva. He's atar alatami by yom mashvi. It sprinkles on the 7th day. And then we also have a comparison between the mikveh and the sprinkling, that it needs to be by day. Also, this woman that needs to wait one day before she can go to the mikveh, she's called a shemeres yaim. She guards one day, so she has to wait for sunrise. Umar says, Pshita, you said before mikveh, and then you itemized one detail, and you said a shemeres yaim has to wait. You said before, lay tivlin, she's a regular mikveh, it has to be done by day. Gemara says, 1 second. That's not so clear. First it asks, everyone that needs to use the mikveh has to go by day. They can't do it before dawn. Before dawn. So it says it's necessary shemeres yom. Why? Salka dait chamina tevi career rishayna shel zav. Rishayna shel zav is global carry. The ksiv zayster zav shetitz men shechlat zer mabel carry tevi b'yom haynami litval b'yomei. V'ha b'yomei lematzi tavla. The ksiv kol yimei zayva. Very interesting comparison. Very interesting logic here. See, what happens is there's a zava and a zav. A zava is the woman. She has. She sees blood, and it's in the abnormal time. It's not the 7 nida days. It would be during the 11 days that are following that, which is like off cycle. And if she sees once, she's a shemeres yom keneged yom. She has to wait one more day. If she sees a second time, she also has to wait one more day. So 2 days in a row, she has to wait the 3rd day, and then she can go to the mikveh sometime during that day. If she sees 3 times, then she becomes a Zava Gedayla.
And that's 2 weeks.
Then she has to wait another 7 days with checking and all of that, clean days. The Zav, on the other hand, he sees once, he can go to the mikveh. He sees twice, he becomes a Zav, I don't know what it's called. He becomes a full Zav. A Zav. And then if he sees a 3rd time, then he has to bring a carbon as well. Okay, we had that before in the Ein Bains. There's no difference in the Zav that sees 2 and 3 except for the carbon. Okay, now let's compare the Zava to the Zav. Just like the Zav was allowed to go to the mikveh by day. Why? When he only saw once, because he's really not considered a zav. That first Riyah is considered like a balkari.
Right.
And a balkari, if he just has a regular emission, he can go to the mikveh right afterwards. Doesn't have to wait a day before he goes.
And
So
doesn't
I could have
to bring a
thought,
carbon,
and he doesn't have to bring a
after,
carbon also,
yeah.
right? So I could have thought that a zava is similar to one Riyah of a zava is similar to one Riyah of a zav. Now, the truth is that she can't go to the mikveh by day because she needs some sort of shemeres yayim. It says she has to wait. So let her wait till at night, and she should go at night. Problem is, it says, Kamash Malan. So it comes to teach us that you can't do that. Kivan the boy Sphira, because she needs to count Sphira b'yamamahu. It's coming to tell us that counting is only done by day. So she has to wait for day. She can't go at night. And as I could have compared it to the Zav, and that would have made it permissible, but no. Okay, that's explaining why it has to itemize the Shemeres Yom Kineged Yom, that she has to go by day when it could have been included in all other people that need the mikvah. The Kulin Sha'asa Mishallah Amud Shachar Kasha, everyone that did whatever they did, instead of waiting for sunrise, they did it from Amud Shachar. It's very relevant, this piece nowadays, because Alaysa Shachar, Netzach Hama nowadays is about 7:07. Yeah. So what happens if someone did any of these things beforehand? No, they read the Megillah too early. I mean, there's no Megillah now, but a bris or something, they started it too early or something. What would happen? You know, they have to do a tafas dam after some. Well, they would maybe have to draw blood or something, you know, in a kosher way, like someone that had a bris in the hospital. Did they draw blood? No, if it wasn't done properly. If someone was converting, they draw blood. What happened if there's a bris in the hospital? Do they draw blood? No, a regular person, they do draw blood. Yeah, if someone didn't have a kosher circumcision, they draw blood, I guess. No, if the male does the bris in the, they draw blood. He's not doing the same mitzvah. Right. No, I'm just saying. Yeah, no, I'm saying that, let's say it was done even by a mile, but it was done before the time. Done too early. They didn't want the lox and bagels to go bad. They made a bris early in the morning. So, but it was before sunrise. They said still kosher because it wasn't before dawn. Before dawn would be the problem.
Yeah, it's a gray area.
Yeah. So how do we know this? Minani mili. Amar Rava Damakra V'Yikra Lekim LaAryayim LeMeiru Bakarayim. It says in the pasuk that God called the light, he called it day. Now the light, as it's coming, it's already called day. So good, it's already day. Elamayata, if that's the case, continue the pasuk, you're going to get into trouble here. Into darkness he calls night. If it's not fully dark, it's still called night. That means that night is going to be from sunset. And we don't say night is at sunset. We said night is at the 3 stars. Yeah. We hold that it's not night until the 3 stars. You're telling me that it's night already when it starts to get dark because it's day already when it starts to get light. You have to be consistent. Reb Zera is another source from Nehemiah. Over there it says, over there, they had to build the Beis Hamikdash at the same time when they were standing guard, because there were people that would sabotage what was happening. So it says we were doing work from the morning, and half the people were holding spears from the morning until even from dawn until 3 stars. And it says that the night was watching. My Vaimer, what's the other pasuk? It says, see, it's just telling you when they did work. It's not really telling you what's considered day, what's considered night. Usually you work by day, but it's not. So they started from dawn until 3 stars. That would tell me that that's day. It says, no, maybe they got to work early and they were left late. Day is really from sunrise to sunset, to sundown. How do you know that it's just because they got there they were working from dawn to 3 stars that's considered the day? So Tashma, Mishmar. No, the night was the guarding and the day was the work. So that means that was actually considered day. Okay. Kolayim kasha l'kriyas Megillah. The whole day you could read the Megillah. You ready? We're going to have 22 items here that you can do by day, the whole day. L'kriyas halal, and for halal. Kiyas shayfer. You can also blowing the shayfer. You can do all day. Tilas lulav. You can shake the lulav all day. Tfilas musaf and musaf you can do all day. That was a machlekes and brachas. Ula musafin, and to actually bring the carbon musaf you can do all day. Levide aparim. Also, if there was a sacrifice that was brought, you can say that viday all day. Which type of sacrifice is this? Could be the parhelm davar shel tzibur, which was when the community, based on a psak of the Sanhedrin, did something wrong, or maybe the Kohen Gadol did something wrong.
This is for day or night. These are different.
These are done all day. What we're saying is that any time during the day is acceptable. Levide meiser, and so on. What was this? On the third year, they would do. They would say viday by the beer meisters. They would have to make sure that everything was taken. They would also say this viday. Levide Yom Kippurim. I guess it means the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur. He has all day to say that viday. L'smicha for leaning on the carbon. L'shchita for slaughtering. L'tenufa. Tenufa is waving certain sacrifices are waved. La'agasha is the mincha being brought close to the mizbeach. L'kmitza is taking the scoopful. La'aktara to burning it on the altar. L'malika is using the fingernail. L'kabbalah to accepting the blood in a vessel. La'azaya is for sprinkling the blood over here. Oh, la'hashkaya saita, and also for having the sota drink the water. Or la'rifa se'egla, for breaking the neck of the calf if someone was found dead between cities, and also for the purification of the mitzayra. Kol alayla kosher l'ktir sa'imer, the entire night is kosher for harvesting the aimer, lehekte chalavim veivarim, and for burning those limbs that weren't burnt. Ze'aklal. Here's the rule: davar shemitzvah b'yom kosher kol hayom. Anything that the mitzvahs by day, you can do it all day. Davar shemitzvah b'layla kosher kol halayla. If the mitzvah is by night, you can do it the whole night. Minalan. Where do you know that you can read the Megillah the whole day? These days are remembered and performed. Okay, you have all day. From sunrise to sunset, it says in the Hallel Rabbi Yossi, this day Hashem did another source for Hallel. Until Aslulav, how do you know you have all day? Take on the first day. It says it's a day of blasting the shofar. It says that you have to bring the carbon musaf each day on its day. How do you know that you're allowed to daven musaf all day? It's the same like the sacrifice. Sacrifice all day, the prayer as well. Levide parim. How do you know that the confession that's said over those sacrifices is done all day? The Aleph kapara kaparim Yom Kippurim. We learned from Yom Kippur. The Tanya was taught in the Brayis Gabi Yom Kippurim. Chipur ba'adivad beisay. The kaparas dvarim akasav medaber. The kapara b'yamamahu. It's talking about an atonement that's done with words, and an atonement is performed by day. On this day, I will atone for you. Levide meiser, for the confession of the tithing. We have a juxtaposition over there. It says that you say before Hashem that I've removed all the holy from my house. It means I've given all the truma and everything. And next to that, it says that today I command to you. So that means it's done anytime during the day. Leaning on the sacrifice and also slaughtering. It says that he leans on it and then he slaughters it. It says on the day of the slaughtering. So it means by day. L'tenufa, how do you know the waving is done by day? It says on the day. Agasha, bringing close, it says because that's compared to the waving. And they bring close. The kohen takes it from the woman and he waves it and he brings it close. For the bird, shechting the bird with the fingernail, and doing kmitza, which is the scoop of a mincha, and offering it on the altar, and for sprinkling the blood. All of that could be done anytime during the day. It says on the day that he commanded the Jewish people, which means that it's performed by day. and for the Saita to drink, Asya Torah, we have a comparison between the words. It says Torah. It says that the Kohen will perform all of these laws. And according to the Torah that you will teach, and according to the judgment, ma mishpat bayayim, just like judgment has to be by day. We have other sources for that. So af kan bayayim, also the drinking this, having the sight to drink the water is also done by day, just like a judgment is done by day. Larifa segla, and for the breaking of the neck of the calf, which is done if a person is found dead. It's an atonement, just like kachim, and that is done by day. This is also and for purification of the mitzvah. It says clearly it's done by day. We have a brisa that says that the aimer, the sacrifice, the barley sacrifice that's brought on the 16th of Nisan, it was harvested by night. The brisa says that it was done by night, and Sira Usfira. I guess the counting, because you count the days of the Aimer as well. That's done by night, and it's how do we count by day? If you forgot, I understand, but how does it even work? Oh, I'm not sure. Maybe it means I'll just lachatchila. And for offering the limbs, that can be all night. It says it should burn all night until the morning. The rule is that anything that's done by day is performed all day. You just basically listed everything, and then you tell me that this is the rule. What do I need the rule if you itemize the whole thing? What are you coming to include? It says there's one thing that you missed. There's spoons of frankincense that are on the table. You didn't say when you put that on and when you take it off. And because this is the rule, that means that it's done by day as well. It follows the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. The Tanya was taught, Rabbi Yossi, it doesn't have to be there continuous. It could be just, as long as it's there every day, it's fine. So if you took the old one off in the morning and you put the new one on in the evening, that's also good. Mani makayim lefnei Hashem tamid, but it says it needs to be constant. That it shouldn't. I'm not sure if this means that the constant only has to do with the bread. No, I think he's translating the word constant differently. He's saying that the tamid doesn't mean constant; it means consistent. That every single day it's always there. Yeah, it shouldn't go overnight. Yeah, it has to be consistent, not constant. The word tamid, which means constant, could also be translated as consistent. Every day you have to bring the carbon tamid. You don't do it constantly, you just do it consistently. Okay, something that the mitzvah is by night, you have the whole night to do. What are you including over there? You can eat the carbon pesach the whole night, like Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Not like Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah that says you have to stop the seder at chatzos, at midnight. The Tanya was taught in the Brisa of Achlas Abasa B'Layla Zeh that you eat the sacrifice this night. Amar Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Nemer Kan B'Layla Zeh v'Nemer La'alan v'Avarti Beretz Mitzrayim B'Layla Zeh. Over here it says that it's by night, and over there it says on this night, and over there it says by the Makas Becheres on this night. Malahalan at chatzos, Avkana at chatzos. Just like over there, it's only till midnight. It was just like by God passed through at midnight. So too, the carbon pesach is only eaten till midnight. We're not going like that. We're saying that you have the whole night.
Is that really the halacha? You don't have to finish the whole carbon pesach.
Yeah, that's the machlekes, and so that's why we do like the first night we stop early and. Okay, let's leave it over here. Okay, have a good week, everyone.